Question 1. The control framework reveals that a critical business application is experiencing intermittent performance issues, impacting customer access. A senior developer, citing urgent business needs, requests direct, elevated access to the cloud environment's network configuration settings to make an immediate, undocumented adjustment. The engineer is aware that the standard change management process requires a formal request, risk assessment, and approval before any configuration changes are made, and that sharing credentials is strictly prohibited by company policy and relevant data protection guidelines. Option A. Provide the developer with your own administrative credentials to allow them to make the necessary changes quickly. Option B. Refuse the request and inform the developer that all changes must follow the established change management process, including a formal request and risk assessment, and offer to expedite the review process if a formal request is submitted. Option C. Grant the developer direct, elevated access to the network configuration settings to resolve the performance issue immediately, as the business need is urgent. Option D. Advise the developer that the performance issue is outside the scope of your immediate responsibilities and suggest they consult a different team. Correct answer is C. Grant the developer direct, elevated access to the network configuration settings to resolve the performance issue immediately, as the business need is urgent. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in cloud security, where a perceived immediate business need conflicts with established security protocols and potential regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of a business operation with the responsibility to maintain data integrity, confidentiality, and availability, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's operations. The certified cloud security engineer must navigate this by prioritizing security and compliance over expediency. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to the established change management process and the principle of least privilege. This ensures that any modification, even if seemingly minor, is properly vetted, documented, and authorized. It upholds the integrity of the security controls and prevents unauthorized access or configuration drift, which are critical for maintaining compliance with regulations like those enforced by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) or the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) concerning data protection and breach notification. By following the documented procedure, the engineer demonstrates professional integrity and a commitment to robust security practices, thereby safeguarding the organization from potential breaches and regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that bypasses the change management process, even with good intentions, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This action undermines the established security governance, creating a backdoor for potential unauthorized access or misconfigurations that could lead to data breaches. Such a bypass directly violates principles of accountability and auditability, making it impossible to track changes and their impact on security posture. This could lead to violations of regulations requiring documented security controls and incident response plans. Another incorrect approach, which involves sharing credentials, is a severe security lapse. It violates the principle of least privilege and introduces significant risks of unauthorized access, data compromise, and difficulty in attributing actions to specific individuals, which is a direct contravention of many data protection laws. A third incorrect approach, which involves ignoring the request due to perceived minor impact, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the interconnectedness of cloud security controls. Even minor changes can have cascading effects on security and compliance. This negligence can lead to vulnerabilities that are exploited, resulting in regulatory fines and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the request and its potential impact. They must then consult relevant policies, procedures, and regulatory requirements. If there is any ambiguity or potential risk, escalation to a supervisor or a dedicated security review board is paramount. The decision should always be to uphold security and compliance standards, even if it means delaying a business operation. Documenting all communications and decisions is crucial for accountability and auditability. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that a new cloud-based application handling sensitive customer data can be deployed significantly faster and at a lower cost if the standard security review and data encryption protocols are temporarily bypassed during the initial rollout phase, with the intention of implementing them later. As a certified cloud security engineer operating under U.S. federal regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Refuse to approve the deployment until all standard security review processes and data encryption protocols are fully implemented and verified, clearly documenting the risks associated with any deviation. Option B. Proceed with the expedited deployment, relying on the cloud provider's inherent security features and planning to address specific encryption and review requirements in a subsequent phase. Option C. Implement the expedited deployment but immediately flag the bypass security controls to the compliance officer, requesting a waiver for the initial rollout period. Option D. Deploy the application with the bypass security controls, assuming that the risk of a breach during the short initial phase is negligible and that the business benefits outweigh potential security concerns. Correct answer is A. Refuse to approve the deployment until all standard security review processes and data encryption protocols are fully implemented and verified, clearly documenting the risks associated with any deviation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in cloud security, where a perceived shortcut to efficiency clashes with fundamental security and compliance principles. The challenge lies in balancing the business's desire for rapid deployment and cost savings against the imperative to protect sensitive data and adhere to regulatory mandates. The engineer must navigate conflicting priorities and potential pressures from management, understanding that a compromise on security can have severe legal, financial, and reputational consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established security controls and compliance frameworks. This aligns with the core principles of cloud security engineering, which demand a proactive and systematic approach to identifying, evaluating, and mitigating risks. Specifically, for a U.S.-based organization operating under regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS, implementing robust access controls, encryption, and audit logging is not optional but a mandatory requirement. This approach ensures that any deployment, even if initially perceived as less efficient, meets the necessary security posture and regulatory compliance, thereby protecting the organization from breaches and penalties. It reflects best professional practice by embedding security and compliance from the outset, rather than attempting to retrofit them later. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves bypassing the established security review process to expedite deployment. This is a direct violation of most cloud security best practices and regulatory frameworks. For instance, under NIST guidelines or PCI DSS, unauthorized access or modification of sensitive data due to a lack of proper review can lead to significant noncompliance findings, fines, and a breach of trust. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the engineer's professional responsibility to protect the organization's assets and data. Another incorrect approach is to assume that the cloud provider's default security settings are sufficient without independent verification. While cloud providers offer robust security features, the shared responsibility model means the customer is responsible for configuring and managing security within their environment. Relying solely on defaults without a specific assessment against the organization's unique data sensitivity and regulatory requirements, e.g., GDPR if applicable, or specific state data privacy laws in the U.S., is a critical oversight. This can lead to vulnerabilities that are easily exploited, resulting in data breaches and regulatory penalties. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings over security controls, such as opting for less secure but cheaper storage options for sensitive data. This directly contravenes the principle of data protection and the requirements of regulations like HIPAA, which mandate appropriate safeguards for protected health information. The potential cost of a data breach far outweighs any short-term savings, and this approach demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of risk management and professional duty. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying the assets and data involved and their sensitivity. 2. Understanding the applicable regulatory and compliance requirements. 3. Evaluating potential threats and vulnerabilities. 4. Assessing the likelihood and impact of a security incident. 5. Implementing controls to mitigate identified risks to an acceptable level. 6. Documenting the entire process and decisions made, In situations of conflicting priorities, the engineer must clearly articulate the risks associated with any proposed shortcut to stakeholders, providing data-driven justification for adhering to established security and compliance protocols. Escalation to management or a dedicated compliance team should be considered if pressure to bypass critical controls persists. Question 3. During the evaluation of a client's cloud infrastructure, you discover that a critical security logging feature, essential for detecting and responding to potential breaches, is configured to be disabled to reduce operational costs. The client's IT manager is pressuring you to confirm that disabling this feature will not pose a significant risk, as they need to meet a strict budget deadline for the quarter. Option A. Proceed with disabling the security logging feature without further consultation, as the IT manager has directly requested it and is responsible for the infrastructure's budget. Option B. Document the security risks associated with disabling the logging feature. Clearly outline the potential impact on compliance and incident response capabilities, and present this information to the client's IT manager. Advise against disabling the feature, but if the client insists after understanding the risks, obtain explicit written confirmation of their decision and the acceptance of liability for any resulting security incidents. Option C. Refuse to disable the security logging feature, citing it as a non-negotiable security requirement, and inform the IT manager that you cannot proceed with their request. Option D. Immediately disable the security logging feature as requested by the IT manager to meet the budget deadline, assuming the client understands the implications and has the authority to make such a decision. Correct answer is B. Document the security risks associated with disabling the logging feature. Clearly outline the potential impact on compliance and incident response capabilities, and present this information to the client's IT manager. Advise against disabling the feature, but if the client insists after understanding the risks, obtain explicit written confirmation of their decision and the acceptance of liability for any resulting security incidents. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's desire for immediate cost savings and the cloud security engineer's responsibility to ensure robust security posture, especially when sensitive data is involved. The engineer must balance business needs with regulatory compliance and ethical obligations. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising security for expediency. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established security frameworks and regulatory requirements. By documenting the risks, seeking explicit client approval for any deviations, and ensuring that compensating controls are implemented, the engineer upholds their professional duty. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible cloud security management, ensuring that decisions are informed, transparent, and defensible. It also respects the client's ultimate decision-making authority while ensuring they are fully aware of the security implications. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling security features to meet a cost target without a comprehensive risk assessment and client consultation is professionally unacceptable. This action demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of care and could lead to significant security breaches, data loss, and regulatory penalties. It bypasses critical risk management processes and exposes the client to unacceptable threats. Such an action would likely violate ethical codes of conduct for IT professionals and could contravene specific clauses within relevant cloud security standards or frameworks that mandate risk-based security decisions. Another incorrect approach, which is to refuse to implement any cost-saving measures regardless of their security impact, is also professionally problematic. While security is paramount, an effective cloud security engineer also understands the business context and strives to find secure solutions that meet operational and financial objectives. An outright refusal without exploring alternatives or engaging in a constructive dialogue about risk mitigation demonstrates a lack of collaboration and business acumen, potentially alienating the client and hindering the adoption of necessary cloud services. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the client's objective and constraints. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment of any proposed changes, especially those impacting security. 3. Identifying potential security vulnerabilities and their impact. 4. Proposing secure alternatives or recommending appropriate compensating controls. 5. Clearly communicating the risks and benefits of each option to the client. 6. documenting all discussions, decisions, and implemented controls. 7. Obtaining explicit client approval for any deviations from standard security practices, ensuring they understand the associated risks. Question 4. Market research demonstrates that a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a cloud-hosted application just days before its scheduled launch. Management is pressuring the cloud security engineer to proceed with the launch, suggesting the vulnerability can be patched post-launch, and to simply document the risk for future remediation. The engineer is aware that the application handles sensitive customer data and operates within the United States regulatory landscape. What is the most appropriate course of action for the cloud security engineer? Option A. Proceed with the launch as scheduled, documenting the vulnerability and its potential impact, with a verbal assurance from management to address it in a future update. Option B. Attempt to implement a quick, temporary workaround for the vulnerability without full validation to mitigate immediate concerns and allow the launch to proceed. Option C. Clearly articulate the security risks and potential regulatory noncompliance to management, document the findings and recommendations, and escalate the issue through appropriate channels for a decision on delaying the launch until the vulnerability is remediated. Option D. Focus on the marketing and launch aspects of the project, leaving the security assessment and remediation to a different team without direct involvement. The correct answer is C. Clearly articulate the security risks and potential regulatory noncompliance to management, document the findings and recommendations, and escalate the issue through appropriate channels for a decision on delaying the launch until the vulnerability is remediated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma where a cloud security engineer is pressured by management to overlook a potential security vulnerability to meet a tight deadline for a new product launch. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate business objective of launching the product with the long-term responsibility of ensuring robust security and compliance. The engineer must navigate conflicting priorities, potential reputational damage, and personal professional integrity. The pressure to prioritize speed over security, especially in a regulated environment, is a common but dangerous pitfall. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves clearly articulating the security risks associated with the identified vulnerability and its potential impact on data privacy and regulatory compliance. This includes referencing specific requirements of relevant U.S. regulations, such as the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, and potentially industry-specific regulations like HIPAA if applicable to the data being handled. The engineer should document their findings and recommendations and escalate the issue through appropriate channels, emphasizing the potential legal, financial, and reputational consequences of proceeding without remediation. This upholds the professional duty to protect sensitive data and maintain system integrity, aligning with the core principles of cloud security engineering and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with the launch without addressing the vulnerability, despite knowing the risks, constitutes a failure to adhere to due diligence and professional responsibility. This directly violates principles of secure system design and deployment, and could lead to breaches that trigger reporting requirements under U.S. data breach notification laws. It also disregards the spirit and letter of security standards like the NIST CSF, which mandate risk assessment and mitigation. Accepting the management's directive to document it and fix it later, without a concrete, approved plan and timeline for remediation, is also a failure. This approach creates a false sense of security and leaves the organization exposed to ongoing risk. It is a form of willful negligence, as the known vulnerability is not being actively managed. Attempting to minimize the vulnerability impact without a thorough risk assessment and validation by security experts is unprofessional. This can lead to underestimating the actual threat and failing to implement adequate controls, thereby increasing the likelihood of a successful attack and subsequent regulatory penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then determining appropriate mitigation strategies. When faced with pressure to compromise security, the professional should 1. Document all findings and risks clearly. 2. Communicate these risks effectively to relevant stakeholders, including management and legal/compliance teams. 3. Propose concrete remediation steps with realistic timelines. 4. Escalate the issue through defined organizational channels if consensus on risk acceptance cannot be reached. 5. Prioritize adherence to regulatory requirements and ethical obligations above short-term business pressures. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual access to sensitive customer data by an administrator account that is not typically associated with such operations, raising concerns about potential unauthorized activity or policy violation. Option A. Escalate the alert to the Security Operations Center (SOC) and the Compliance Department for review and guidance on the appropriate next steps according to established incident response procedures. Option B. Temporarily disable the administrator's account to prevent further access while assessing the situation, and then proceed with a full audit of their recent activities. Option C. Immediately initiate a forensic investigation into the administrator's activity, including reviewing the content of access files, and document all findings for potential disciplinary action. Option D. Log the event for future reference and continue monitoring, assuming the activity is legitimate until concrete evidence of malicious intent is discovered. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a forensic investigation into the administrator's activity, including reviewing the content of access files, and document all findings for potential disciplinary action. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in cloud security, specifically concerning data privacy and potential misuse of privileged access. The challenge lies in balancing the need for security monitoring and incident response with the obligation to protect user privacy and adhere to data protection regulations. The certified cloud security engineer must navigate the complexities of interpreting system logs, understanding the sensitivity of the data being accessed, and acting within the bounds of established policies and legal frameworks. The correct approach emphasizes a structured, policy-driven, and privacy-conscious response. It involves immediate escalation to the appropriate internal stakeholders, such as the legal or compliance department, and potentially the data privacy officer, to ensure that any investigation or remediation is conducted in accordance with relevant regulations. This approach prioritizes transparency with affected parties, where appropriate and legally permissible, and ensures that actions taken are authorized and documented. It aligns with the principles of least privilege and data minimization, ensuring that access to sensitive data is strictly controlled and audited. In the context of U.S. regulations, this would involve adherence to frameworks like HIPAA for health data, GDPR, if applicable to U.S. entities processing EU citizen data, or CCPA for California consumer data, all of which mandate specific procedures for data breaches and unauthorized access. The ethical imperative is to protect individual privacy while fulfilling security responsibilities. An incorrect approach that involves directly investigating the user's activity without proper authorization or notification to relevant departments risks violating privacy laws and internal policies. This could lead to legal repercussions, reputational damage, and a breach of trust. For instance, directly accessing and analyzing the content of the user's files, even for security purposes, without a clear legal basis or explicit consent, could be construed as illegal surveillance or a violation of data privacy rights under various U.S. federal and state laws. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the alert due to a perceived low risk or lack of immediate impact, is a failure of due diligence and could lead to a significant security incident going undetected, resulting in data breaches and non-compliance with regulatory requirements for timely incident reporting and mitigation. This demonstrates a disregard for the organization's security posture and its legal obligations. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a clear understanding of the organization's incident response plan, data governance policies, and applicable legal and regulatory frameworks. It involves a systematic process of 1. Recognizing the potential severity of the alert, 2. Consulting established policies and procedures for handling such events, 3. Escalating to the appropriate internal teams e.g., legal, compliance, privacy, 4. Documenting all actions taken, 5. Ensuring that any investigation is conducted with the minimum necessary access and in compliance with privacy mandates. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates a need to streamline the deployment of new microservices within the cloud environment to accelerate feature delivery. The current process involves manual configuration of network security groups, access controls, and logging policies for each new service, which is time-consuming and prone to human error. Which of the following approaches to process optimization best aligns with maintaining a secure and compliant cloud posture? Option A. Adopt a move fast and break things mentality, prioritizing speed of deployment above all else, and address any security or compliance issues that arise after the services are live. Option B. Implement a policy that allows development teams to bypass standard security reviews for new microservices if they can demonstrate a critical business need for rapid deployment, with a post-deployment security check. Option C. Rely on the cloud provider's default security settings for all new microservices, assuming they offer sufficient protection without requiring custom configurations. Option D. Automate the creation and configuration of security controls and policies for microservices using infrastructure as code ISC templates that are pre-approved and regularly audited for compliance and security best practices. The correct answer is D. Automate the creation and configuration of security controls and policies for microservices using infrastructure as code ISC templates that are pre-approved and regularly audited for compliance and security best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that enhance efficiency without compromising the integrity of security controls or violating regulatory mandates. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that introduce unacceptable risks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology for process optimization. By integrating security and compliance requirements into the optimization lifecycle from the outset, it ensures that improvements do not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or lead to non-compliance. This proactive stance aligns with the principles of secure by design and privacy by design, which are fundamental to modern cloud security engineering and are implicitly or explicitly supported by regulatory frameworks focused on data protection and system integrity. This approach fosters a culture of continuous improvement where security is an enabler, not a blocker. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed and cost reduction without a thorough security and compliance impact assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure can lead to significant regulatory violations, such as breaches of data privacy laws, e.g., if sensitive data is mishandled due to an unsecure optimized process or failure to meet audit requirements, e.g., if optimized processes bypass necessary logging or access controls. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect data and maintain trust. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing optimizations based on anecdotal evidence or without proper validation poses a substantial risk. This can result in the introduction of subtle but critical security flaws that may not be immediately apparent. Such a failure could lead to noncompliance with security standards that mandate documented and tested procedures. It also undermines the credibility of the security team and the optimization efforts. Finally, an approach that relies on external, unverified tools or scripts for optimization without rigorous vetting is also professionally unsound. This can introduce supply chain risks, malware, or misconfigurations that compromise the entire cloud environment. Regulatory frameworks often require due diligence in selecting and implementing third-party solutions, and a failure to do so can result in significant penalties and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk appetite, regulatory obligations, and business objectives. When considering process optimization, a structured approach should be adopted. 1. Define the optimization goals clearly. 2. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the proposed changes, including security and compliance implications. 3. Involve relevant stakeholders, including security, compliance, and operations teams. 4. Develop and test the optimized process in a controlled environment. 5. Implement the changes with robust monitoring and rollback capabilities. 6. Continuously review and refine the process based on performance and security metrics. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that a suspected data exfiltration event is actively occurring within the cloud environment. The immediate priority is to halt the unauthorized data transfer and secure the affected resources. However, The incident response team is concerned that aggressive containment actions might inadvertently destroy critical forensic evidence needed for post-incident analysis and regulatory reporting. What is the most appropriate immediate action to balance containment with evidence preservation? Option A. Promptly initiate a full system wipe and rebuild of all potentially affected instances to ensure no further data can be exfiltrated, assuming logs will be sufficient for analysis. Option B. Rely solely on the cloud provider's automated threat detection and response systems to quarantine the suspicious activity and wait for their confirmation before taking any manual action. Option C. Temporarily disable all logging for the affected resources to reduce the noise and focus on network-level containment, planning to re-enable logging after the immediate threat is neutralized. Option D. Immediately isolate the suspected compromised resources from the network and initiate secure, forensically sound snapshots of their current state and relevant logs before proceeding with further containment or eradication steps. Correct answer is D. Immediately isolate the suspected compromised resources from the network and initiate secure, forensically sound snapshots of their current state and relevant logs before proceeding with further containment or eradication steps. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the requirement for thorough, auditable processes. The pressure to quickly contain a suspected breach can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term security posture and compliance. The challenge lies in implementing a process that is both efficient and robust, ensuring that critical security data is preserved and analyzed without introducing new vulnerabilities or violating regulatory mandates. The organization's reliance on a single cloud provider adds complexity, as the provider's shared responsibility model dictates specific actions and limitations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased response that prioritizes immediate containment while ensuring the integrity and availability of forensic data. This aligns with best practices for incident response, such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology guidelines, which are foundational for many cloud security frameworks. Specifically, it emphasizes isolating affected resources to prevent further compromise, followed by the secure collection and preservation of logs and evidence. This methodical approach ensures that the investigation can proceed with accurate data, supporting root cause analysis and post-incident remediation. It also facilitates compliance with regulations that mandate data retention and auditability for security incidents. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping or rebuilding compromised systems without proper evidence preservation. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it destroys critical forensic data necessary for understanding the attack vector, identifying the scope of the breach, and preventing recurrence. It directly contravenes requirements for incident investigation and reporting mandated by various data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated threat detection and response mechanisms without human oversight or manual verification. While automation is crucial for efficiency, it can miss subtle indicators of compromise or generate false positives. Over-reliance on automation without a human-in-the-loop process can lead to misclassification of incidents, inadequate containment, or unnecessary disruption of services, all of which can have regulatory and operational repercussions. It fails to meet the due diligence expected in security incident management. A third incorrect approach is to delay evidence collection until after the immediate threat is neutralized, assuming that the cloud provider's logs will be sufficient. This is problematic because cloud provider logs, while valuable, may not capture all necessary details of the compromise at the endpoint or application level. Furthermore, the retention policies of cloud providers might not align with the organization's specific regulatory obligations for evidence preservation, leading to potential non-compliance and an incomplete investigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should adopt a structured incident response plan that incorporates the principles of containment, eradication, and recovery, with a strong emphasis on evidence preservation throughout. This involves 1. Activating the incident response team and following predefined playbooks. 2. Prioritizing containment by isolating affected systems, potentially through network segmentation or disabling access. 3. Securely collecting and preserving all relevant logs, snapshots, and configuration data from affected resources in the cloud environment. 4. Conducting a thorough forensic analysis to determine the root cause and impact. 5. Implementing remediation steps and strengthening defenses. 6. Documenting the entire process for audit and compliance purposes. This systematic approach ensures that immediate threats are addressed while maintaining the integrity of the investigation and adhering to regulatory requirements. Question 8. The risk matrix shows a critical vulnerability impacting multiple cloud-hosted applications with a high likelihood of exploitation. The current change management process is designed for weekly batch deployments, and the incident response plan has not been updated for rapid cloud remediation. Which approach best optimizes the process for addressing this immediate threat while maintaining security and compliance? Option A. Defer the patch deployment until the next scheduled weekly batch deployment window to adhere to the established change management schedule. Option B. Utilize cloud-native automation and orchestration tools to deploy a validated security patch or configuration change across all affected cloud resources, integrated with existing CI/CD pipelines where possible. Option C. Immediately deploy the patch to all affected instances without formal change control approval or pre-deployment testing to expedite remediation. Option D. Manually apply the patch to each affected cloud instance, documenting the changes in a log after completion. Correct answer is B. Utilize cloud-native automation and orchestration tools to deploy a validated security patch or configuration change across all affected cloud resources, integrated with existing CI/CD pipelines where possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security where a newly identified vulnerability requires immediate attention, but the organization's existing change management and incident response processes are not adequately optimized for rapid cloud-native deployments. The pressure to remediate quickly, coupled with the dynamic nature of cloud environments, creates a tension between speed and adherence to established security controls. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the threat with the need for controlled, documented, and tested changes to prevent unintended consequences or further security gaps. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging cloud-native automation and orchestration tools to rapidly deploy a validated security patch or configuration change across the affected cloud resources. This aligns with best practices for cloud security operations, emphasizing the shift-left principle by integrating security into the deployment pipeline. Specifically, using infrastructure as code (ISC) and automated patching solutions allows for consistent, repeatable, and auditable deployments. This method minimizes human error, ensures that the remediation is applied uniformly, and provides a clear audit trail, which is crucial for compliance with regulatory frameworks that mandate demonstrable security controls and incident response capabilities. The speed of cloud environments necessitates agile and automated responses, and this approach directly addresses that need while maintaining control and visibility. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves manually applying the patch to each affected instance. This is time-consuming, prone to human error, and difficult to scale in a cloud environment. It creates an inconsistent security posture, as some instances might be missed or incorrectly patched, leading to potential compliance violations related to maintaining a secure configuration and effective incident response. Another incorrect approach is to delay the patch deployment until the next scheduled maintenance window. While this adheres to traditional change management, it fails to adequately address the immediate threat posed by the vulnerability. This delay significantly increases the organization's attack surface and exposure to exploitation, which is a direct failure in fulfilling the duty of care to protect data and systems, and can lead to regulatory penalties for inadequate risk management and incident preparedness. A third incorrect approach is to bypass established change control procedures entirely and deploy the patch without documentation or testing. While seemingly fast, this introduces significant risk. Lack of documentation hinders future audits and incident investigations, and untested changes can lead to service disruptions or introduce new vulnerabilities, undermining the overall security posture and potentially violating regulations that require change management and impact analysis. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. When a critical vulnerability is identified, The first step is to assess its impact and exploitability. If the risk is high, the organization must prioritize rapid remediation. This involves evaluating existing cloud security tools and processes for their ability to automate and accelerate the patching process. The decision should favor solutions that maintain auditability and control, such as ISC and automated deployment pipelines. If existing processes are insufficient, the immediate priority should be to adapt or implement automated solutions rather than resorting to manual or delayed methods that compromise security. Continuous monitoring and testing of deployed changes are also essential to ensure the effectiveness of the remediation and prevent unintended consequences. Question 9. Implementation of process optimizations within a cloud security engineering team's CI/CD pipeline is being considered to accelerate deployment cycles. Which of the following approaches best balances security, compliance, and operational efficiency under U.S. federal regulatory frameworks? Option A. Implementing a manual security gate at the end of the CI/CD pipeline, requiring extensive documentation review and sign-off from multiple stakeholders before each deployment, regardless of the criticality of the changes. Option B. Reducing the frequency and scope of security code reviews and penetration testing to expedite the release of new features, relying on post-deployment incident response to address any security issues. Option C. Focusing solely on infrastructure as code ISC, security validation, without incorporating application-level security testing or runtime monitoring, assuming ISC covers all potential risks. Option D. Integrating automated security scanning tools directly into the CI/CD pipeline to identify vulnerabilities before deployment, coupled with continuous monitoring of deployed resources for configuration drift and security anomalies. The correct answer is D. Integrating automated security scanning tools directly into the CI/CD pipeline to identify vulnerabilities before deployment, coupled with continuous monitoring of deployed resources for configuration drift and security anomalies. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that enhance security posture without introducing new vulnerabilities or hindering operational agility. Careful judgment is required to select optimizations that are both effective and aligned with the specific regulatory framework governing cloud security operations, which for this exam is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations and NIST guidelines. The correct approach focuses on integrating security into the development lifecycle through automated checks and continuous monitoring. This aligns with the principles of DevSecOps and the shift-left security paradigm, which are best practices for modern cloud environments. Specifically, it adheres to NIST SB 800-53 controls related to system and communications protection, security assessment and authorization, and configuration management. By automating security checks within CI/CD pipelines, organizations can identify and remediate vulnerabilities early, reducing the cost and impact of security incidents. Continuous monitoring further ensures that security configurations remain effective and that any deviations are promptly addressed, supporting the principle of ongoing authorization. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thorough security validation introduces significant regulatory and ethical failures. For instance, bypassing automated security scans or reducing the scope of penetration testing to meet aggressive timelines directly violates the spirit and letter of regulations like FISMA, which mandate rigorous security assessments. This also ethically compromises the responsibility to protect sensitive data and systems. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on manual security reviews, especially in a dynamic cloud environment, is inefficient and prone to human error, increasing the likelihood of overlooking critical vulnerabilities. This failure to implement adequate security controls can lead to noncompliance with NIST SB 800-53 requirements for vulnerability management and continuous monitoring. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory requirements e.g. NIST SB 800-53, FedRAMP guidelines. This should be followed by a risk-based assessment of proposed process optimizations, evaluating their potential impact on security posture and compliance. Prioritizing solutions that leverage automation for consistent and repeatable security checks and that facilitate continuous monitoring, represents a proactive and compliant strategy. When evaluating options, consider the principle of least privilege in access controls for automated processes, and ensure that all security measures are documented and auditable. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that a development team has identified a new cloud-native service that promises to significantly streamline their deployment pipeline. However, this service has not undergone the organization's standard security review and approval process. The team is eager to implement it immediately to meet aggressive project deadlines. What is the most appropriate course of action for the cloud security engineer? Option A. Advise the development team to proceed with the implementation, but to implement basic ad hoc security measures they deem sufficient for now. Option B. Escalate the situation to senior management, highlighting the potential security risks and regulatory noncompliance associated with bypassing the established review process, and recommend a temporary halt to the service's adoption until a full security assessment is completed. Option C. Authorize the immediate use of the new cloud service, with a commitment to conduct a security review retrospectively once the deadlines are met. Option D. Grant provisional approval for the service's use, contingent on the development team documenting all security configurations and providing them for review within 48 hours. The correct answer is C. Authorize the immediate use of the new cloud service, with a commitment to conduct a security review retrospectively once the deadlines are met. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with robust security controls. Specifically, the scenario highlights the tension between adopting new, potentially more efficient cloud services, and ensuring that these services comply with established security policies and regulatory requirements. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions about process optimization without compromising the organization's security posture or its adherence to relevant regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and risk-based evaluation of new cloud services. This involves understanding the specific security implications of the service, mapping them against existing organizational policies and regulatory mandates, and implementing appropriate controls before full adoption. This proactive stance ensures that process optimization does not introduce unacceptable risks. It aligns with the principles of secure by design and defense in depth, which are fundamental to cloud security engineering. Furthermore, it demonstrates due diligence and accountability, crucial for maintaining trust and compliance. An incorrect approach that bypasses established security review processes introduces significant regulatory and ethical failures. It can lead to the adoption of services that are not adequately secured, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or breaches. This directly violates the principle of protecting organizational assets and customer data, which is a core ethical responsibility. From a regulatory standpoint, it can result in noncompliance with data protection laws and industry-specific regulations, leading to fines, legal action, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on cost savings without a thorough security assessment, is also professionally unacceptable. While cost efficiency is a business objective, it cannot supersede security and compliance obligations. This approach risks overlooking critical security vulnerabilities that could lead to far greater financial and reputational costs in the event of a security incident. It demonstrates a failure to understand the holistic impact of technology decisions on the organization's risk profile. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the new service, evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks, and determining appropriate mitigation strategies. Collaboration with legal, compliance, and business units is essential to ensure that all aspects of the decision are considered. Professionals must advocate for security and compliance, even when faced with pressure for rapid adoption or cost reduction, by clearly articulating the risks and the regulatory implications of any deviations from established best practices. Question 11. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in alerts related to unusual outbound network traffic from a specific group of virtual machines, but initial investigation suggests these are not malicious. What is the most effective process optimization strategy to address this situation while maintaining robust security? Option A. Conduct a detailed analysis of the unusual traffic patterns to identify the source and nature of the activity, then refine the monitoring rules and thresholds based on findings to distinguish between benign anomalies and potential threats. Option B. Increase the alert severity for all outbound network traffic anomalies to ensure no potential threat is missed, regardless of the volume of alerts. Option C. Immediately disable the specific monitoring rule generating the alerts to reduce noise and allow security personnel to focus on other potential threats. Option D. Implement automated blocking of all outbound traffic from the affected virtual machines until the activity can be fully investigated by the security team. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed analysis of the unusual traffic patterns to identify the source and nature of the activity, then refine the monitoring rules and thresholds based on findings to distinguish between benign anomalies and potential threats. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security operations, identifying and responding to anomalous activity without causing undue disruption to legitimate business functions. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security monitoring with the imperative to maintain service availability and operational efficiency. Overly sensitive alerts can lead to alert fatigue, wasting valuable security team resources on false positives, while underconfigured monitoring can miss critical threats. Specific regulatory framework for the 312-40 Certified Cloud Security Engineer exam, which focuses on U.S. regulations, would emphasize compliance with standards like NIST SB 800-53, which mandates continuous monitoring and incident response capabilities. The correct approach involves a systematic process of tuning and validation. This begins with understanding the baseline behavior of the cloud environment. By analyzing historical data, security teams can establish what constitutes normal activity. When anomalies are detected, the next step is to investigate their root cause. This investigation should prioritize understanding the context of the anomaly. Is it a known, benign event, or does it indicate a potential security incident? Based on this investigation, the monitoring system's rules and threshold should be adjusted to either reduce false positives or increase sensitivity to genuine threats. This iterative process of monitoring, analysis, and tuning, documented thoroughly, aligns with best practices for process optimization in cloud security, ensuring that the monitoring system remains effective and efficient. This also directly supports NIST SB 800-53 control enhancements related to continuous monitoring and incident response, ensuring that security controls are effectively implemented and maintained. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disable alerts for any activity that triggers a high volume of false positives without a thorough investigation. This bypasses the critical step of understanding the underlying cause of the anomaly and could leave the environment vulnerable to actual threats that are masked by the noise. Ethically and regulatorily, this demonstrates a failure to maintain adequate security controls and a disregard for the principles of continuous monitoring and risk management mandated by U.S. cybersecurity frameworks. Another incorrect approach is to solely rely on automated remediation without human oversight for all detected anomalies. While automation is valuable, critical security decisions, especially those that could impact service availability, require human judgment to assess context and potential business impact, aligning with the principle of least privilege and responsible incident response. Failing to involve human judgment in such cases can lead to unintended consequences and a breakdown in established security protocols, potentially violating compliance requirements for incident handling. The professional reasoning process should involve a structured approach to anomaly detection and response. This includes establishing clear procedures for alert triage, investigation, and remediation. When faced with a high volume of alerts, the first step should always be to understand the nature of the alerts and their potential impact. This involves consulting documentation, threat intelligence, and engaging with relevant stakeholders. The decision to adjust monitoring thresholds or implement new detection rules should be based on data-driven analysis and a clear understanding of the trade-offs between security and operational efficiency. Documentation of all changes and the rationale behind them is crucial for auditability and continuous improvement, ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements for security control management. Question 12. Process analysis reveals that the current cloud security deployment pipeline is experiencing significant delays due to manual security checks and a lack of integrated automated testing. To address this, which of the following approaches would best optimize the process while maintaining a robust security posture? Option A. Rely solely on the cloud provider's default security configurations and assume they are sufficient for all deployed applications, without further independent verification. Option B. Introduce a new, complex security framework that requires extensive manual configuration and validation by a limited team, without providing additional resources or training. Option C. Accelerate the deployment schedule by deferring all non-critical security checks to post-deployment audits, focusing solely on immediate feature delivery. Option D. Implement automated security scanning tools within the CI/CD pipeline to identify vulnerabilities early in the development lifecycle, coupled with a risk-based approach to prioritize remediation efforts based on potential impact. The correct answer is D. Implement automated security scanning tools within the CI/CD pipeline to identify vulnerabilities early in the development lifecycle, coupled with a risk-based approach to prioritize remediation efforts based on potential impact. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security engineering, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative of maintaining robust security controls. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can lead to shortcuts or the overlooking of critical security processes, creating vulnerabilities. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that enhance efficiency without compromising security posture or regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, risk-based methodology for identifying and implementing process improvements. This aligns with best practices in cloud security and process optimization, emphasizing continuous improvement and adaptation. By focusing on automating repetitive security tasks, integrating security into the CI/CD pipeline, and establishing clear feedback loops, organizations can achieve both speed and security. This proactive and integrated approach minimizes the likelihood of introducing new vulnerabilities during development and deployment, directly supporting the principles of secure by design and secure by default, which are foundational to maintaining a strong security posture in cloud environments. This also supports the principles of least privilege and defense in depth by ensuring that security checks are consistently applied and that potential issues are addressed early in the lifecycle. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over thorough security reviews. This directly violates the principle of security by design and can lead to the introduction of critical vulnerabilities into production environments. Such a practice creates significant regulatory and ethical risks, as it demonstrates a disregard for protecting sensitive data and systems, potentially leading to breaches, data loss, and non-compliance with data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach is to implement security controls in a reactive manner, only addressing issues after they have been identified in production. This is inefficient and costly, and it exposes the organization to unnecessary risk. It fails to leverage the benefits of proactive security measures and can result in significant downtime and reputational damage. Ethically, it represents a failure to adequately protect the organization's assets and customer data. A third incorrect approach is to implement process optimizations without proper documentation or training for the security team. This can lead to misconfigurations, inconsistent application of security policies, and a lack of understanding of the new processes. This creates operational risks and can undermine the intended benefits of the optimization, potentially leading to security gaps and compliance issues due to a lack of auditable and repeatable processes. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a continuous improvement mindset, integrating security into every stage of the cloud lifecycle. This involves 1. Understanding the current processes and identifying bottlenecks or areas of inefficiency. 2. Prioritizing optimizations based on risk reduction and potential security enhancements. 3. Leveraging automation to streamline repetitive security tasks and integrate them into development workflows, e.g., CI/CD pipelines. 4. Establishing clear metrics to measure the effectiveness of implemented optimizations and their impact on security posture. 5. ensuring that all changes are thoroughly tested, documented, and communicated to relevant stakeholders. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating processes to adapt to evolving threats and technological advancements. Question 13. Investigation of a new cloud-based artificial intelligence (AI) initiative by the marketing department, which proposes using generative AI for customer engagement and content creation, presents a challenge for the Chief Information Security Officer (CISO). The initiative has not undergone a formal security review, and there is no existing organizational policy specifically addressing the use of AI in cloud environments. The CISO needs to determine the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure security and compliance without unduly hindering business progress. Option A. Delegate the responsibility for ensuring the security of the AI initiative entirely to the marketing department's technical lead, trusting their judgment to implement necessary controls. Option B. Initiate a collaborative risk assessment with the marketing department to understand the AI's data inputs, processing, and outputs, and develop interim security guidelines and controls tailored to this specific initiative, while a broader AI security policy is drafted. Option C. Authorize the marketing department to proceed with the AI initiative, assuming their existing cloud security practices are sufficient, and address any security issues that arise retrospectively. Option D. Immediately halt all AI-related activities within the marketing department until a comprehensive, organization-wide AI security policy is developed and approved, which could take several months. The correct answer is B. Initiate a collaborative risk assessment with the marketing department to understand the AI's data inputs, processing, and outputs, and develop interim security guidelines and controls tailored to this specific initiative, while a broader AI security policy is drafted. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust security governance within a cloud environment. The CISO must balance the business imperative to leverage new AI capabilities with the responsibility to protect sensitive data and maintain compliance with relevant regulations. The lack of a clear, established policy for AI adoption in the cloud creates ambiguity, increasing the risk of missteps that could lead to security breaches, data leakage, or regulatory violations. The CISO judgment is critical in navigating this uncharted territory, ensuring that security is not an afterthought but an integral part of the AI adoption lifecycle. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with the business units to understand their AI initiatives and collaboratively developing a risk-based security framework. This aligns with the principles of a defense-in-depth strategy and the shared responsibility model inherent in cloud security. By establishing clear guidelines, security requirements, and review processes before widespread adoption, the organization can mitigate risks effectively. This proactive stance is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and adherence to regulatory expectations, such as those that might be implied by frameworks like NIST CSF or specific cloud provider compliance documentation, which emphasize risk management and continuous monitoring. It fosters a culture of security awareness and ensures that security considerations are embedded from the outset, rather than being retrofitted, which is a hallmark of best professional practice in cloud security engineering. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes immediate business enablement without adequate security vetting poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. This could lead to the use of AI models trained on or processing sensitive data without proper anonymization, consent, or access controls, potentially violating data privacy regulations. Furthermore, deploying AI solutions without understanding their inherent vulnerabilities, e.g., adversarial attacks, data poisoning, could result in security incidents that are difficult to attribute or remediate, leading to reputational damage and potential fines. Another incorrect approach is to impose a complete moratorium on all AI initiatives until a comprehensive, long-term policy is finalized. While seemingly cautious, this can stifle innovation and create friction with business units, potentially leading them to pursue shadow IT solutions that are even less secure and visible. This approach fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of cloud adoption and the need for agile security practices. It also misses opportunities to learn and adapt security controls based on early, controlled AI deployments. Finally, delegating AI security solely to the individual business units without centralized oversight or standardized security requirements is a recipe for disaster. This fragmented approach leads to inconsistent security postures, making it difficult to achieve an organization-wide security baseline. It increases the likelihood of compliance gaps and makes it challenging to respond effectively to security incidents that may span multiple AI initiatives. This abdication of responsibility is a direct failure in establishing a robust security governance framework. Professional reasoning. Professionals in cloud security engineering must adopt a risk-based, collaborative, and proactive approach. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the business objectives and the specific AI technologies being considered. 2. Identifying potential security and compliance risks associated with each AI initiative. 3. Developing and implementing appropriate security controls and policies tailored to the identified risks. 4. Establishing clear lines of responsibility and accountability for AI security. 5. Continuously monitoring and adapting security measures as AI technologies and threats evolve. This structured approach ensures that security is an enabler of innovation, not a barrier, while upholding regulatory obligations and ethical standards. Question 14. What factors determine the appropriate level of access control granularity for sensitive data stored in a US-based cloud environment, considering the diverse needs of different business units and the requirements of the NIST cybersecurity framework? Option A. The preferences of the cloud service provider's default access control configurations, without further organizational review. Option B. The principle of least privilege, balanced with the operational necessity for data access, as guided by a documented risk assessment that considers data classification and stakeholder input. Option C. The access requirements of the most technically advanced business unit, assuming they represent the highest standard for all other units. Option D. The maximum level of access that can be technically implemented to ensure no unauthorized access, regardless of business unit requirements or operational impact. Correct answer is B. The principle of least privilege, balanced with the operational necessity for data access, as guided by a documented risk assessment that considers data classification and stakeholder input. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security engineering, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational and business requirements of different stakeholders. Challenge lies in understanding that security is not an absolute, but a risk management discipline that requires collaboration and compromise. Different departments will have varying levels of technical understanding, risk tolerance, and immediate priorities, making it difficult to achieve a unified security posture. Careful judgment is required to identify the core security needs, while respecting the operational realities and business objectives of each group. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a collaborative, risk-informed decision-making process. By engaging all relevant stakeholders, including legal, compliance, and business unit representatives, the cloud security engineer can ensure that security measures are not only technically sound, but also aligned with regulatory requirements and business objectives. This approach fosters transparency, builds trust, and leads to more sustainable and effective security solutions. Specifically, adhering to the principles of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, which is a widely adopted U.S. regulatory framework for cybersecurity risk management, would guide this process. The CSF emphasizes identifying critical assets, understanding threats and vulnerabilities, and implementing appropriate safeguards, all of which are best achieved through stakeholder engagement. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most stringent security controls without considering operational impact or business needs would fail to meet professional standards. This could lead to user frustration, decreased productivity, and potential workarounds that introduce new security risks. From a regulatory perspective, such an approach might inadvertently violate principles of proportionality and necessity, as mandated by frameworks like the NIST CSF, which advocate for risk-based security measures rather than blanket, overly restrictive policies. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the immediate convenience of a specific business unit over broader security and compliance mandates would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the cloud security engineer's responsibility to protect the organization's assets and data, as well as to ensure adherence to all applicable laws and regulations. Such a decision could expose the organization to data breaches, financial penalties, and reputational damage, directly contravening the due diligence expected under U.S. cybersecurity regulations. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk assessment and stakeholder management. This includes 1. Clearly defining the security objectives and the regulatory landscape. 2. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and understanding their perspectives, needs, and constraints. 3. Facilitating open communication and collaboration to build consensus. 4. Documenting all decisions, justification, and residual risks. 5. Continuously monitoring and adapting security controls based on evolving threats and business requirements. This iterative process ensures that security remains an enabler of business, not a barrier. Question 15. When evaluating the integration of a new third-party SaaS application into the organization's cloud environment, which stakeholder perspective is most critical for ensuring compliance with the relevant regulatory framework and maintaining a secure posture? Option A. The perspective of the business unit that will directly utilize the application, focusing on its functional requirements and user experience. Option B. The perspective of the IT operations team, primarily concerned with the application's infrastructure requirements and operational stability. Option C. The perspective of the security engineering team, focused on identifying and mitigating potential security vulnerabilities and threats introduced by the application. Option D. The perspective of the legal and compliance department, ensuring adherence to all applicable data privacy regulations and contractual obligations. Correct answer is A. The perspective of the business unit that will directly utilize the application, focusing on its functional requirements and user experience. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for rapid innovation and feature deployment with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. Stakeholders, particularly business units, often prioritize speed to market and feature richness, which can lead to pressure to bypass or deprioritize security controls. The certified cloud security engineer must navigate these competing interests, ensuring that security is not an afterthought but an integral part of the cloud adoption lifecycle. This requires a deep understanding of the specific regulatory framework applicable to the organization's operations within the exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with stakeholders to integrate security requirements early in the development and deployment process. This aligns with the principles of security by design and defense in depth, which are foundational to effective cloud security. By demonstrating how security controls enable business objectives and mitigate risks, the engineer can foster a collaborative environment. This approach is best professional practice because it embeds security into the organizational culture and processes, rather than treating it as a reactive measure. It also directly addresses the compliance obligations mandated by the relevant regulatory framework, ensuring that the organization operates within legal and ethical boundaries. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on post-deployment security audits and remediation. This reactive stance is insufficient because it allows vulnerabilities to exist in production environments, increasing the risk of breaches and non-compliance. It fails to meet the proactive and continuous security monitoring requirements often stipulated by regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize business unit requests for features over documented security policies, even if those policies are designed to meet regulatory mandates. This demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility and a disregard for the legal and ethical obligations of the organization. Such a failure could lead to significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. This means identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their impact, and prioritizing security measures accordingly. It also requires clear communication with all stakeholders, translating technical security requirements into business-relevant terms. The engineer should advocate for security best practices and regulatory compliance, providing evidence-based justifications for their recommendations. When conflicts arise, the engineer should escalate to appropriate management or governance bodies, ensuring that decisions are made with a full understanding of the associated risks and compliance implications. Question 16. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in latency for critical application services hosted in the cloud, coinciding with a recent deployment of new security monitoring tools. The security team is concerned that the new tools might be introducing vulnerabilities or are misconfigured, potentially impacting the availability of these services. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the cloud security engineer? Option A. Immediately roll back the deployment of the new security monitoring tools and revert to the previous configuration to restore service performance. Option B. Increase the allocated cloud resources for the affected application services to compensate for the perceived performance impact of the new security tools. Option C. Disable specific security features within the new monitoring tools that are suspected of causing the latency, without a full investigation, to quickly alleviate the performance issue. Option D. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis to determine if the performance degradation is directly attributable to the new security monitoring tools, their configuration, or other environmental factors, before implementing any changes. The correct answer is A. Immediately roll back the deployment of the new security monitoring tools and revert to the previous configuration to restore service performance. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security engineering, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational demands and cost considerations of cloud services. The challenge lies in interpreting performance metrics, which can be ambiguous, and translating them into actionable security improvements without causing undue disruption or excessive expenditure. The chosen regulatory framework for this exam is U.S. federal regulations, specifically those applicable to cloud security, such as NIST guidelines and potentially aspects of FISMA. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation that prioritizes security risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, while also considering the operational context. This aligns with the principles of risk management embedded in NIST SB 800-53 and the continuous monitoring requirements often mandated by FISMA. It emphasizes understanding the root cause of performance anomalies before implementing security changes, ensuring that any proposed solutions are effective, proportionate, and do not introduce new vulnerabilities or significantly degrade service. Incorrect approaches fail to adhere to these principles. One incorrect approach might involve immediately implementing broad, restrictive security policies based on a superficial interpretation of performance metrics. This could lead to unnecessary operational friction, hinder legitimate business functions, and potentially violate the principle of least privilege if not carefully targeted. It also bypasses the critical step of root cause analysis, which is a cornerstone of effective incident response and security posture management under NIST guidelines. Another incorrect approach might be to dismiss the performance metrics entirely, assuming they are unrelated to security. This ignores the potential for security misconfigurations or attacks to manifest as performance degradation, a critical oversight in a continuous monitoring environment. Such an approach would fail to meet the proactive security requirements expected under U.S. federal regulations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the context of the performance metrics. This involves correlating the observed metrics with known security events, system logs, and configuration changes. The next step is to perform a risk assessment, evaluating the potential impact of the observed anomalies on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Based on this assessment, a targeted investigation should be initiated to identify the root cause. Solutions should then be developed and implemented in a phased manner, with continuous monitoring to validate their effectiveness and ensure no adverse side effects. This iterative process, grounded in risk management and continuous improvement, is essential for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment. Question 17. The performance metrics show a consistent upward trend in the number of security incidents reported by a cloud service provider's customers over the past quarter. As a certified cloud security engineer operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks, which of the following actions best addresses this situation from a stakeholder perspective? Option A. Focus solely on technical solutions to patch vulnerabilities identified in the cloud infrastructure, deferring any customer communication or regulatory reporting until a complete resolution is achieved. Option B. Advise management to temporarily halt all new customer onboarding until the incident rate can be stabilized, without providing specific details about the nature or frequency of the incidents to existing customers. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of incident response procedures, focusing on root cause analysis for each reported incident, and develop a transparent communication plan for affected customers and relevant regulatory bodies, detailing the nature of the incidents and the steps being taken to mitigate them. Option D. Immediately implement a broad set of new security controls across all customer environments without prior consultation, assuming these will proactively address the rising incident numbers and reduce future occurrences. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of incident response procedures, focusing on root cause analysis for each reported incident, and develop a transparent communication plan for affected customers and relevant regulatory bodies, detailing the nature of the incidents and the steps being taken to mitigate them. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in the number of security incidents reported by a cloud service provider's customers. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts customer trust, regulatory compliance, and the overall reputation of the cloud provider. The security engineer must balance the need for rapid incident response with the requirement to maintain accurate and transparent communication with affected parties, all while adhering to specific regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, evidence-based investigation and timely, transparent communication with affected stakeholders, including customers and relevant regulatory bodies. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and accountability expected of cloud security professionals. Specifically, in the context of U.S. regulations, this approach would involve adhering to frameworks like NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, for incident response and reporting, and potentially the requirements of the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, for data breach notification if personal information is compromised. Proactive engagement with customers to understand their specific concerns and provide actionable guidance is also crucial for maintaining trust and demonstrating commitment to their security. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate technical remediation without proper documentation or stakeholder notification fails to meet regulatory obligations. For instance, under U.S. law, failure to notify affected individuals and relevant authorities of a data breach within prescribed timeframes can result in significant penalties and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, which involves downplaying the severity of incidents to avoid negative publicity, is ethically unsound and can lead to a loss of customer confidence and potential legal action for misrepresentation. It also hinders the ability to learn from incidents and improve security posture, which is a core tenet of continuous improvement in cybersecurity. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's scope and potential impact. This involves gathering all available data, assessing the risk to affected parties, and consulting relevant internal policies and external regulatory requirements. Communication should be planned and executed with clarity and honesty, ensuring all necessary parties are informed appropriately and in a timely manner. Continuous monitoring and post-incident analysis are vital for refining security controls and preventing future occurrences. Question 18. The audit findings indicate a significant deficiency in the consistent application of data encryption and access control policies across the organization's multi-cloud infrastructure, leading to potential exposure of sensitive customer information. Which of the following actions best addresses these findings from a U.S. regulatory compliance and best practice perspective? Option A. Implement a centralized cloud security governance framework that defines uniform encryption standards and granular access control policies, and deploy automated tools to enforce these standards across all cloud environments, including regular audits of compliance. Option B. Develop a new set of internal policies for each cloud provider, assuming that each provider's native security features are sufficient and require no further organizational oversight. Option C. Focus on remediating the specific instances of non-compliance identified in the audit by applying patches and adjusting individual configurations on a case-by-case basis. Option D. Request each cloud service provider to independently validate their security controls for data encryption and access management, and update internal documentation to reflect their stated capabilities. The correct answer is A. Implement a centralized cloud security governance framework that defines uniform encryption standards and granular access control policies, and deploy automated tools to enforce these standards across all cloud environments, including regular audits of compliance. Explanation: the audit findings indicate a significant gap in the organization's cloud security posture, specifically concerning the management of sensitive customer data within a multi-cloud environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for remediation with the long-term strategic implications of cloud security architecture and compliance. The organization must not only address the immediate audit findings, but also ensure that its cloud security strategy aligns with relevant regulatory frameworks, such as the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, and potentially specific industry regulations applicable in the U.S., like HIPAA for healthcare data or PCI DSS for payment card information, if those are in scope. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of data across multiple cloud providers, each with its own security controls and shared responsibility models. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment and the implementation of a unified cloud security governance framework. This framework should define clear policies, procedures, and controls for data protection, access management, and incident response across all cloud environments. It necessitates a deep understanding of the shared responsibility model for each cloud service provider, CSP, and the implementation of compensating controls where CSP-provided security is insufficient. This approach represents best professional practice because it is proactive, risk-based, and directly addresses the root causes of the audit findings. It ensures ongoing compliance with U.S. regulatory requirements by embedding security and privacy principles into the cloud architecture and operational processes, thereby minimizing the likelihood of future breaches and regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach would be to implement ad hoc security measures that only address the specific findings without a broader strategic vision. For instance, focusing solely on patching vulnerabilities without re-evaluating access controls or data encryption policies would be a failure. This would be a regulatory failure because it does not demonstrate a commitment to a robust cybersecurity program as expected by frameworks like NIST CSF, which emphasizes continuous monitoring and improvement. Another incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the security provided by the CSPs without validating their effectiveness or implementing necessary organizational controls. This ignores the organization's own responsibilities under the shared responsibility model and could lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations, as the organization remains accountable for the security of its data. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting customer data. A third incorrect approach might be to overinvest in expensive, complex security tools without a clear understanding of their integration into the existing multi-cloud environment, and without aligning them with specific compliance requirements. This is inefficient and may not effectively address the identified risks, leading to a false sense of security and potential regulatory scrutiny for failing to implement appropriate and effective controls. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the audit findings and their potential impact. This should be followed by a review of applicable U.S. regulatory frameworks and industry best practices. The next step involves assessing the current cloud security architecture against these requirements, identifying gaps and prioritizing remediation efforts based on risk. Developing a comprehensive cloud security strategy that includes governance, data protection, identity and access management, and incident response tailored to the multi-cloud environment is crucial. Finally, continuous monitoring, regular audits, and a commitment to ongoing improvement are essential to maintain a strong security posture and ensure compliance. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a critical vulnerability with a high likelihood of exploitation and a severe impact on data confidentiality, but the proposed remediation involves a scheduled downtime that is unacceptable to key business stakeholders due to its impact on revenue-generating operations. What is the most appropriate next step for the cloud security engineer? Option A. Escalate the issue to senior management with a recommendation to accept the risk of the vulnerability until a more opportune time for patching. Option B. Implement the patch during business hours with minimal notification, assuming the downtime will be brief and manageable. Option C. Proceed with the scheduled downtime for patching immediately, as the security risk is paramount and outweighs business concerns. Option D. Conduct a detailed analysis of compensating controls that can be implemented immediately to reduce the exploitability of the vulnerability, while a less disruptive remediation strategy is developed. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed analysis of compensating controls that can be implemented immediately to reduce the exploitability of the vulnerability, while a less disruptive remediation strategy is developed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security engineering where a critical vulnerability is identified, but the immediate remediation action carries a significant risk of service disruption. The professional challenge lies in balancing the imperative of security with the business need for continuous operation. The stakeholder perspective is crucial here, as different groups will prioritize these competing concerns differently. A cloud security engineer must navigate these competing priorities, understand the potential impact of both the vulnerability and the remediation, and communicate effectively to facilitate an informed decision. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that quantifies the likelihood and impact of the vulnerability being exploited, as well as the likelihood and impact of the proposed remediation causing downtime. This assessment should be presented to relevant stakeholders, including business owners, IT operations, and legal/compliance teams, along with clearly defined mitigation options and their associated risks and benefits. This aligns with the principles of risk management mandated by frameworks like NIST, which emphasize informed decision-making based on a thorough understanding of potential threats and impacts. The ethical obligation is to protect the organization's assets and data while also ensuring business continuity, requiring a balanced and data-driven approach. Incorrect approaches analysis. Immediately patching without considering downtime risks an unacceptable level of business disruption, potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, and causing significant financial loss. This approach prioritizes security in isolation, neglecting the operational realities and business impact, which is ethically questionable as it fails to consider the broader organizational consequences. Delaying patching indefinitely due to fear of downtime, without implementing compensating controls, leaves the organization exposed to exploitation. This constitutes a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect organizational assets and data, potentially violating regulatory requirements for data protection and incident response. Attempting to remediate without proper testing or rollback plans introduces a high risk of unintended consequences, including extended downtime or data corruption, demonstrating a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management process. This involves 1. Threat identification, understanding the vulnerability and its exploitability. 2. Impact assessment, determining the potential consequences of exploitation, data breach, service disruption, reputational damage. 3. Likelihood assessment, estimating the probability of exploitation. 4. Control evaluation, assessing the effectiveness and risks of proposed remediation actions. 5. Stakeholder communication, presenting findings and options clearly to enable informed decision-making. 6. Decision and implementation, executing the chosen course of action with appropriate monitoring and contingency planning. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are not reactive, but are based on a thorough understanding of risks and impacts, aligning with professional ethics and regulatory expectations. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal that a critical new feature, developed by a third-party vendor and integrated into the organization's cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) system, has been deployed without undergoing the standard security review process. The development team claims the feature is essential for an upcoming marketing campaign, and that delaying deployment would result in significant missed revenue opportunities. The vendor has provided a high-level overview of the feature's functionality, but has not shared detailed security architecture or penetration test results. Which of the following actions represents the most professionally responsible and compliant approach for the cloud security engineer? Option A. Approve the feature's continued operation, assuming the vendor has followed their own security best practices, and schedule a review for the next quarterly security audit. Option B. Request the vendor to provide a detailed security white paper and conduct a limited, on-demand vulnerability scan of the feature's public-facing endpoints to ensure basic security. Option C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive security review of the deployed feature, including penetration testing and vulnerability scanning, and work with the development team and vendor to remediate any identified issues before the marketing campaign launches. Option D. Escalate the issue to senior management, highlighting the security risks and potential regulatory noncompliance, and recommend the immediate rollback of the feature, until a proper security review can be completed. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive security review of the deployed feature, including penetration testing and vulnerability scanning, and work with the development team and vendor to remediate any identified issues before the marketing campaign launches. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security engineering, balancing the immediate need for a new feature with the potential for introducing security vulnerabilities. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass established security protocols. The challenge lies in making a decision that upholds security principles and regulatory compliance without unduly hindering business objectives. The engineer must consider the potential impact of a security lapse on the organization's data, reputation, and legal standing. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to the established change management process. This aligns with best practices for cloud security governance, which emphasize a proactive and systematic approach to managing changes. Specifically, it reflects the principles of security by design and defense in depth, ensuring that new functionalities are evaluated for security implications before deployment. This approach is crucial for maintaining compliance with relevant regulations, e.g., NIST CSF, ISO 27001, or specific industry regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS, depending on the context of the exam's assumed jurisdiction, which for 312-40 is generally U.S.-centric unless otherwise specified, that mandate risk management and secure development lifecycles. By involving security architects and conducting a formal review, the organization demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to protecting sensitive data. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves bypassing the security review process to expedite deployment. This directly violates the principle of least privilege and the requirement for security to be integrated into the development lifecycle. It creates a significant vulnerability by introducing untested code into a production environment, potentially exposing sensitive data or systems to attack. This failure to follow established security protocols can lead to regulatory penalties, data breaches, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach is to approve the deployment without a clear understanding of the security implications, relying solely on the developer's assurance. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and abdication of responsibility. It fails to acknowledge the inherent conflict of interest a developer might have in prioritizing speed over security. This approach neglects the fundamental security tenet that all changes must be validated by an independent security function. A third incorrect approach is to postpone the security review indefinitely, assuming the risk is minimal. This is a dangerous assumption in cloud environments where threats are dynamic and sophisticated. It creates a latent vulnerability that could be exploited at any time. This approach ignores the proactive nature of security and the need for continuous monitoring and assessment, which are critical for maintaining a secure cloud posture and complying with ongoing security requirements mandated by various regulations. Professional reasoning. When faced with such a decision, a cloud security engineer should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, the tension between speed and security. 2. Gathering all relevant information, understanding the proposed change, its intended functionality, and the existing security controls. 3. Consulting established policies and procedures, referring to the organization's security policies, change management guidelines, and relevant regulatory requirements. 4. Evaluating risks and impacts, assessing the potential security vulnerabilities and their consequences. 5. Exploring alternatives, considering options that balance speed with security, such as phased rollouts or temporary mitigation strategies. 6. Making a documented decision, clearly articulating the rationale behind the chosen course of action and ensuring it is communicated to all stakeholders. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational security objectives and regulatory obligations.